Welcome to a perfect world, Top Screen Tales. A world with no crime, where a supercomputer judges your soul before you can even think of a crime. And if your mind turns dark, you're erased. But what happens when a monster appears who this perfect system simply cannot see? Welcome to 22nd century Japan, a society perfected by the Sibyl System. This network constantly monitors every citizen's mental state, their psychopaths, quantifying their potential for crime before it even happens. Our story begins with Akane Tsunemori, a rookie inspector on her very first day. She's a top graduate, chosen for this elite role, but her pristine uniform and wide eyes betray her inexperience. As her vehicle speeds through the gleaming, automated city, she looks out at a world she believes is safe and just, completely unaware of the brutal reality she's about to confront. Akane arrives at a derelict block, a stark contrast to the city's clean facade. This is her first crime scene. She's met by her stern superior, Ginoza, who immediately criticizes her arrival time. He introduces her to the Enforcers, latent criminals used as hunting dogs. Her gaze lands on Shinya Kogami, his expression cold and unreadable. They all carry Dominators, the system's judgment made manifest. Ginoza explains the situation. A man's psychopath has skyrocketed, and he's taken hostage. The mission is simple: subdue or eliminate. Akane grips her Dominator, the cold metal a heavy weight in her hand. Inside the trashed building, they find him. The suspect, Nobuo Okura, is a mess of sweat and terror, brutalizing his female captive. Kogami calmly raises his Dominator. The weapon's voice announces the target's crime coefficient is over 300, a lethal threat. Enforcement mode. Lethal eliminator, it declares, before morphing, its components shifting into a more menacing form. Kogami's finger tightens on the trigger, his sole focus on eliminating the man deemed irredeemable by the system. The hostage screams, her own sanity fraying with every passing second, trapped in the crossfire. But as Kogami prepares to fire, Akane's own Dominator locks onto a new target, the victim. The trauma has dangerously clouded her psychopaths, and the system now judges her a threat. Her superior orders Kogami to stand down, but he refuses, arguing the victim is beyond saving. Horrified at the thought of executing an innocent woman, Akane makes an impossible choice. She screams Kogami's name, and when he doesn't listen, she aims her Dominator not at the criminal, but at her own teammate. She pulls the trigger, and a paralyzing energy blast sends Kogami flying backwards, unconscious. Akane stands at attention, receiving a cold lecture from her superior, Inspector Ginoza. He's furious she shot an enforcer to save a latent criminal. "Your sentimentality is a liability," he declares, his voice cutting through the sterile office. He questions her fitness for the job, leaving her shaken. Later, she undergoes a mandatory psychopath check, the expectation of a clouded hue hanging heavy in the air. But the result is shocking. Her color is crystal clear. Despite the trauma and moral conflict, her mind remains perfectly stable, a rare quality that both baffles and unnerves her superiors. Hesitantly, Akane visits Kogami in the infirmary. She expects anger, or at least resentment, for paralyzing him with the Dominator. Instead, he's calm, almost reflective. He tells her not to apologize. "Your way was the right way," he admits, looking her straight in the eye. He explains that as an enforcer, he would have simply eliminated the target without a second thought. But she, as an inspector, saw a human being worth saving. His validation is unexpected, forging a tense but profound bond of respect between the rookie officer and the seasoned latent criminal. An alarm signals a new case. The team gathers as a holographic schematic of a massive drone factory materializes in the briefing room. A worker named Kimihiko Hayama is inside, his crime coefficient rising dangerously. Kogami, patched up and cleared for duty, joins them, his presence a silent reassurance for Akane. Ginoza gives the order, and their armored transport slices through the neon-drenched city. Akane clutches her Dominator, the cold metal a stark reminder of her responsibilities. This is her chance to prove her worth and understand the system she serves. Inside the eerie, automated factory, they find Hayama's workstation. The scene tells a grim story. His locker is covered in cruel digital graffiti, and recovered data logs show a history of relentless workplace bullying. Masaoka, the veteran enforcer, sighs, recognizing the classic signs of a man pushed past his breaking point. Kogami then finds residue of an illegal chemical compound. Hayama had been using a mental camouflage to artificially keep his psychopaths clear, hiding his mounting stress from the Sibyl System. He was a ticking time bomb, and the supposedly perfect system never saw it coming. Back at the factory, Inspector Ganoza pulls Akane aside for a harsh lecture. He warns her not to get too close to the enforcers. They are not your colleagues. They are your hounds, he says, his voice cold. He insists she must maintain a strict line between inspector and latent criminal, lest her own psychopaths become clouded by empathy. Their conversation is cut short by a new lead. The suspect, Kimihiko Hayama, has fled into the vast sewer network beneath the city. As the team prepares to descend, Kogami and Masaoka take point, ready to venture into the darkness below. Deep in the claustrophobic sewer tunnels, Kogami and Masaoka navigate the dripping darkness. The silence is suddenly shattered by the screech of metal. A multi-legged factory drone, weaponized and aggressive, lunges from a side passage. Its movements are too chaotic, too vengeful for an AI. Kogami instantly recognizes the truth. "It's being piloted," he yells. This isn't a pre-programmed machine. It's an extension of Hayama's own rage. The hunter has just become the hunted, trapped in a concrete labyrinth with a desperate man at the controls of a killing machine. After a tense and brutal fight, Kogami and Masaoka manage to disable the drone. Kogami corners Hayama, who is now trembling and defenseless. Before the Dominator can pass judgment, Hayama unleashes a desperate confession. He screams about the colleagues who bullied him relentlessly, how their psychopaths remained perfectly clear while his own deteriorated under the stress, until the system branded him a criminal. He saw no justice, no escape. The Dominator's synthetic voice cuts through his cries, declaring him a target for enforcement. Kogami pulls the trigger, closing the case. The case's resolution feels hollow. Akane finds Kogami in the training room, channeling his thoughts into a punching bag. She finally asks him the question that's been weighing on her. Why did a man like him become an enforcer? Kogami stops, his voice quiet but heavy. He reveals that he was once an inspector, just like her. But his obsession with a particularly gruesome, unsolved case, a case that claimed the life of his partner, caused his crime coefficient to spiral out of control. He chose demotion over leaving the force, becoming a hound so he could continue his hunt. In a society saturated with technology, people escape into vibrant virtual worlds. Holograms transform sterile apartments into personalized paradises, and online avatars offer a new identity. At the center of one popular community is Talisman, a charismatic virtual idol whose every word is gospel to his followers. He offers them validation and a sense of belonging they can't find in the real world. His influence is absolute, and for many users, the line between their digital life and their actual existence has all but disappeared. They live for his approval, hanging on his every word. Division 1 is briefed on a new case. A man found dead in his apartment, an apparent suicide. Ganoza is dismissive, but Kogami and Akane see something more sinister. The victim's popular online avatar, Lemonade Candy, was killed in Talisman's exclusive community just hours before his real-world death. Kogami immediately suspects a connection, theorizing a new breed of criminal who manipulates victims from behind a screen. He believes someone is intentionally driving people to despair, pushing their crime coefficients into the lethal range without ever laying a hand on them. To catch a digital killer, Kogami decides to become a digital predator. Using old contacts, he procures a custom avatar, a rugged, intimidating persona named Bad Soup, and dives into Talisman's network. From the MWPSB office, Akane monitors his vitals and his progress, watching the strange, colorful world unfold on her screen. Kogami wastes no time, immediately seeking out the last user who interacted with the victim, a volatile avatar known as Spooky Bookie. He's not there to play the game. He's there to hunt the hunter. Kogami corners Spooky Bookie in a virtual alley. The user, a man named Hayama, arrogantly boasts about destroying the victim's avatar. But as Kogami interrogates him, the disturbing truth emerges. Hayama isn't the mastermind. He's just another pawn. He reveals that the game's idol, Talisman, is the one who chooses the targets. The entire community is a twisted social experiment run by a hidden puppet master, designed to see if a virtual death can trigger a real one. The true killer remains anonymous, pulling the strings from the shadows. The team sets a trap. They've identified the killer's next likely target, a player known online as Spooky Boogie, and are now shadowing his real-world self. Kogami and Akane wait in the rain-slicked streets, a tense silence hanging between them. The plan is simple. Let the killer make their move and catch them in the act. But the stakes are impossibly high. They're not just waiting for a criminal. They're waiting for a phantom to emerge from the digital world and manifest as a physical threat. A ghost they have to prove is real before another person dies. The bait works perfectly. A man named Masataki Mito corners the target in a deserted industrial area. In the virtual world, Mito is a monstrous, powerful avatar. But here, he's just a man with a hammer, completely consumed by the game's twisted logic. He spouts rhetoric about justice and purification on behalf of his idol, Talisman, before bringing the hammer down. The murder is brutal and quick. It's a horrifying confirmation of their fears. A man has been so thoroughly manipulated by a digital personality that he's become a willing executioner in the real world. Kogami closes in, his Dominator aimed squarely at Mito. The confrontation is over before it begins. The so-called Avenger, so dominant in his virtual persona, is easily disarmed and subdued. Pinned to the ground, Mito doesn't seem to understand his own actions, still ranting about Talisman's greatness and how he was chosen. It becomes painfully clear to the team that they haven't caught the mastermind. Mito is just a puppet, a disposable tool. The true culprit, the one pulling the strings from the shadows, remains completely untouched and unidentified. The scene cuts to a lavish, high-tech apartment overlooking the city. We meet the real Talisman, an elderly, cybernetically enhanced aristocrat named Toyohisa Senguji. He discusses the events with the white-haired man from previous cases, Makishima Shogo. Senguji isn't a revolutionary or a madman. He's a hunter. He expresses a chilling philosophy that the thrill of the hunt is the only true way to feel alive, viewing Kogami and the MWPSB as worthy prey. The murders were not for justice or chaos, but simply for sport. A twisted game for the bored and powerful. The Public Safety Bureau is called to a gruesome scene in a public park. A human body, dismembered and perfectly preserved in resin, has been arranged into a grotesque sculpture for all to see. The victim is a young woman, a student from the prestigious Osu Academy. While Ginoza reacts with disgust, Kogami stares intently, his mind racing. He recognizes the chilling precision, the calculated cruelty. This isn't just a murder, it's a statement, a piece of art crafted by a mind devoid of empathy. Akane can only look on in horror, struggling to comprehend how someone could do this. Akane and Kogami arrive at Osu Academy, an elite all-girls school that feels more like a sterile fortress. The students move with an eerie, rehearsed grace, their psychopasses immaculately clear. The headmistress offers platitudes, but no real information. As they walk through the pristine halls, Kogami feels a growing unease. He tells Akane that this perfect, controlled environment, where individuality is suppressed, is the perfect breeding ground for a monster. The killer is hiding in plain sight, protected by the school's flawless reputation and the Sibyl System's blind spots. The killer is revealed. Rikako Oryo, a charismatic and popular student. In the solitude of her private art studio, surrounded by her late father's unsettling creations, her true nature emerges. She speaks to his portrait, her voice a chilling mix of adoration and ambition. She wants to surpass his legacy, to create art that will truly shock the world. Later, she approaches another classmate, her smile disarming, her words like honey. The girl is completely taken in by Rikako's charm. Unaware, she has just become the next piece of canvas for a masterpiece of death. As a second, equally horrific sculpture appears, the pressure mounts on Division 1. The public is panicking, and the killer remains a ghost. In a hidden, opulent room, Rikako Oryo meets with her benefactor, Makishima Shogo. He sits calmly, reading a book, and praises her work, calling it a beautiful expression of human cruelty. He provides her with the philosophy and the means to continue her rampage, seeing her not as a person, but as a fascinating tool. For Makishima, this is just another experiment, Another way to expose the fragility of the so-called perfect society. Kogami stands amidst the grim evidence, his mind racing. He connects the killer's macabre art to the infamous deceased artist Roichi Oryo. It's his daughter, Kogami declares to Akane, Rikako Oryo. She's not just killing, she's continuing his legacy. He points out that all the victims are from the same elite academy, all friends of Rikako. Her hunting ground is her own school, her canvas, her own classmates. Akane watches, unnerved by the cold certainty in his voice. Kogami isn't just investigating a crime, he's mapping the psyche of the predator, anticipating her next move before she even makes it. Inside a dimly lit art studio, surrounded by her gruesome sculptures, Rikako meets with Makishima Shogo. He circles her work, admiring it with an unnerving calm. Beauty is something that decays, he muses, praising her ability to capture that fleeting moment. He sees her not as a monster, but as a true artist expressing her nature. As a gift, he presents her with an antique straight razor, the very same kind her father used. It's a test and an encouragement, a final push from the master manipulator who enjoys watching his pawns dance on the edge of sanity and damnation. The Public Safety Bureau sets a trap. They identify Rikako's next likely target, her close friend Yoshika, and convince her to act as bait. Akane is visibly distressed, watching the monitors as the girl walks into the lion's den. Is it right to use a civilian like this? She asks, but Ginoza coldly dismisses her concerns. For him, the objective is all that matters. Kogami remains silent, his focus absolute, his hand resting near his Dominator. The air is thick with tension as they wait, knowing any mistake could cost an innocent girl her life. They are hunting a monster, but they're using a child to do it. Rikako corners Yoshika in a secluded basement. Just as she's about to strike, Kogami and the Enforcer storm the room. But they're too late. Another figure, Makishima's enforcer Chogu-sung, appears from the shadows. He swiftly and brutally murders Rikako, then disposes of her body in an industrial processor before the team can even react. From a safe distance, Makishima watches the feed, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. His beautiful specimen has been contaminated by the system's interference. The team is left staring at an empty room, their lead executed, the true mastermind erased like a ghost in the machine. Ginoza stands before Bureau Chief Kasei, the pressure mounting with every unsolved case. The mastermind, Makishima, remains a ghost, leaving a trail of bodies and manipulated pawns. Later, in a sterile room, Ginoza faces an older man, his own father, Enforcer Tomomi Masaoka. The air is thick with unspoken history. Masaoka offers fatherly advice, urging his son not to let obsession cloud him like it did Kogami. But Ginoza coldly shuts him down, insisting on professionalism. "Don't call me Nobuchika," he snaps, retreating behind the wall he's built between them. A wall between an inspector and his latent criminal father. Meanwhile, Kogami holds himself up, consumed by the ghosts of his past. He projects old case files onto the wall, the gruesome images of the specimen case flickering in the dark. This was the case that broke him, the case where his partner Sasayama was dismembered. He meticulously connects the dots, the virtual avatars, the cyborg hunter, the artistic schoolgirl killer. He sees the pattern now, the invisible hand guiding them all. It's not just random chaos, it's a performance, an echo of the same cruelty that took his partner's life 3 years ago. Makishima's signature is all over it. Far from the investigation, the mastermind himself, Makishima Shogo, relaxes with a book. His associate, Chogu-sung, questions their next move. Makishima explains his philosophy with chilling calm. He despises the Sibyl System, not for its control, but for how it has made humanity hollow. He believes people have lost the ability to make their own choices, to understand true evil or good, because a machine tells them how to feel. "I want to see the splendor of people's souls," he muses. He isn't just causing chaos, he's conducting a grand experiment to see if humanity can reclaim its will. The breakthrough finally comes. Kogami bursts into the briefing room, his eyes wild with certainty. He lays out his evidence, connecting the dots for everyone. The academy Rikako attended, the circle Senguji moved in, They all have ties to the same social network that his murdered partner Sasayama was investigating 3 years prior. It all leads back to one name, Makishima Shogo. He's the one, Kogami declares, his voice raw. He's the man who killed Sasayama. The hunt is no longer just a case for him. It's a deeply personal vendetta. The ghost from his past now has a face. We flash back 3 years. Inspectors Shinya Kogami and Nobuchika Ginoza, younger and less jaded, brief their team on the horrific specimen case. Their enforcer, Mitsuru Sasayama, a brash and cocky man, listens with a predatory grin. The victim was dismembered and plastinated, turned into a permanent art piece. Against Ginoza's cautious advice, Sasayama eagerly volunteers to follow a dangerous lead into the city's underbelly. He brushes off the warnings, confident he can handle it. Kogami watches him go, a sense of unease hanging in the air as his reckless subordinate disappears into the darkness. Sasayama moves through the decaying, dripping halls of an abandoned underground complex, his flashlight cutting through the oppressive gloom. Getting close, he reports to Kogami over his comms, his voice echoing slightly. He finds a heavy steel door and forces it open, revealing a large makeshift workshop. Bathed in a single harsh spotlight is the source of his investigation. The victim's body, grotesquely reassembled and preserved like a mannequin. Horrified but undeterred, Sasayama raises his sidearm, scanning the deep shadows for the monster responsible for this macabre theater. From the shadows, a figure lunges. It's Toyohisa Senguji, Makishima's cybernetic enforcer. Sasayama is caught off guard, and a brutal fight erupts. Despite his skill, Sasayama is no match for Senguji's cold mechanical power. Pinned and broken, he hears a calm, disembodied voice from a nearby speaker. Makishima Shogo, philosophizing about the beauty of human cruelty. In his final moments, Sasayama understands he was just a pawn in a much larger game. His comms go dead, leaving Kogami shouting his name into a wall of static. Kogami arrives to a scene of absolute horror. He finds what remains of Sasayama, now another specimen in the killer's gallery. The sight shatters him. A guttural scream of pure rage and grief escapes his lips as his mind is consumed by a singular, burning need for vengeance. The Sibyl System registers the violent shift. His psychopath clouds instantly, skyrocketing past the point of no return. Ginoza enters right behind him, only to watch in despair as he is forced to aim his Dominator at his best friend, the man who just became a latent criminal. In a dimly lit hideout, Makishima Shogo calmly discusses his next project with his new associate, the brilliant hacker Cho Gu-sung. They watch screens showing people eagerly receiving sleek, futuristic helmets. Cho explains how the device intercepts and falsifies the psychopath scan, making the wearer feel calm and appear perfectly clear to the Sibyl System. A user puts one on, sighing in relief as his digital hue turns a pristine white. But this is no wellness device. It's a Trojan horse, a key part of Makishima's next grand, terrifying performance, designed to expose the system's fatal flaws. Trying to maintain some normalcy, Akane meets her old friend Yuki Funahara at a club. But the evening takes a strange turn when Yuki introduces her companion, a charismatic, silver-haired man named Makishima Shogo. The air crackles with unspoken tension as he asks Akane about her work, his questions probing and intelligent. Akane is unnerved, feeling a disturbing sense of familiarity she can't quite grasp. She dismisses it as a strange feeling, unaware she's shaking hands with the very monster her team is hunting, a man who sees her as just another piece in his game. The MWPSB is called to a shocking scene. A man, previously with a clear psychopath, has gone berserk in a subway station before being eliminated. Kogami and Ginoza review the data, noticing a pattern. This isn't the first time. They discover the victims all owned the same popular mental care helmet. Kogami's intuition screams that this is Makishima's handiwork. He realizes they're not just dealing with a product causing malfunctions. This is a weapon, designed to turn the Sibyl System against the very people it's meant to protect. And the scale of the attack is still unknown. The trap snaps shut. In a busy city center, Makishima and Cho Gu-sung unleash their virus. Dozens of citizens wearing the helmets suddenly have their crime coefficients spike to lethal levels. Panic erupts as the city's automated drones descend, their dominators locking onto the terrified, confused victims. Akane and the team can only watch in horror from their vehicle as the system they uphold becomes an instrument of mass execution, indiscriminately eliminating people whose only crime was wanting peace of mind. Makishima has turned Sibyl into a public spectacle of slaughter. Chaos consumes the city. Makishima's plan is a brutal success. Citizens wearing his special helmets are committing horrific acts of violence, but their psychopath scans as perfectly clear. The Sibyl System's own security drones, unable to differentiate, turn on innocent civilians, creating a citywide massacre. At the Public Safety Bureau, Ginoza and the team watch in horror, their Dominators completely useless against the helmeted rioters. They are powerless, relegated to damage control as the system they serve actively slaughters the people it's meant to protect. Makishima has turned Sibyl's greatest strength into its most devastating weakness. Amidst the turmoil, Akane receives a desperate video message from her best friend, Yuki. The signal cuts out, but the message is clear. She's in terrible danger. Akane learns Yuki has been abducted by one of Makishima's followers, a cyborg enthusiast named Toyohisa Senguji. Makishima himself watches the abduction unfold, not with malice, but with a detached philosophical curiosity. He sees this not as a simple kidnapping, but as an opportunity to observe the purest form of human cruelty and will, completely unjudged by the Sibyl System. For him, this is the ultimate hunt, and Yuki is the prey. Akane and Kogami track Yuki to a desolate, abandoned subway station. Down in the darkness, Senguchi begins his twisted game. He releases a terrified Yuki into the labyrinthine tunnels, explaining that he will hunt her for sport, a thrill he hasn't felt since before the Sibyl System erased such primitive urges. He unleashes his robotic hounds and begins the chase. Above ground, Kogami coaches a frantic Akane, telling her to discard her reliance on the Dominator and trust her own instincts as a detective and as a human being. The hunt is on, both for Senguchi and for the PSB team. Akane confronts Senguchi as he corners Yuki. She raises her Dominator, but as expected, it's useless against his helmet. Suddenly, Makishima appears from the shadows. He calmly tosses a real, old-fashioned shotgun at Akane's feet. He taunts her, challenging her to make a choice based on her own will, not the system's judgment. "Do you think you can pull the trigger?" he asks. Akane is frozen, paralyzed by the weight of the decision. In that moment of hesitation, Makishima steps forward, calmly slits Yuki's throat with a razor, and lets her fall. Akane can only watch in shock as her best friend dies before her eyes. In a sterile observation room, Akane Tsunemori sits in a state of shock, her eyes vacant. Ginoza and Masaoka watch from behind a one-way mirror, stunned by her psychopath reading. Despite witnessing her best friend's brutal murder just hours ago, her crime coefficient is stable, her hue perfectly clear. Ginoza can't comprehend it, muttering that a normal person would be sent to an isolation facility for life. This anomaly raises a chilling question. Is Akane exceptionally resilient, or is there a fundamental flaw in the Sibyl System's ability to measure human trauma and sanity? The system that governs their entire world has failed to register an undeniable horror. Back in his heavily cluttered room, Shinya Kogami obsessively pores over the incident data, ignoring orders to stand down. He replays the footage of Akane's confrontation with Makishima, analyzing every frame. He notices a pattern, a ghost in the machine. Makishima has appeared at the center of multiple high-stress, high-crime coefficient events, yet he never triggers a single scanner. Kogami has a horrifying epiphany. Makishima is criminally asymptomatic. His psychopath never clouds, regardless of his actions. He explains this to a still dazed Akane, telling her the Dominator failed because in the eyes of the Sibyl System, Shogo Makishima simply does not exist as a criminal. Meanwhile, in their hideout, Shogo Makishima calmly reads a book while Cho Gu-sung monitors news reports of the city's lingering chaos. Makishima expresses a mild disappointment in Akane, musing that he had hoped to see a more primal, interesting side of humanity from her. He expected her to abandon the useless Dominator and act on her own. Cho confirms their next plan is ready, targeting the Ministry of Welfare's Nona Tower. Makishima's true goal becomes clear. It isn't just about sowing chaos, but about striking at the heart of the Sibyl System and revealing its true, hidden nature to the entire world. Having finally processed the horror and Kogami's revelation, Akane emerges from her catatonic state. She is no longer the naive rookie inspector. She finds Kogami in his room, the air thick with smoke and obsession. Her eyes, once wide and uncertain, are now filled with a cold, unwavering resolve. She tells him she understands now that the law cannot judge Makishima. She asks Kogami to teach her his methods, to show her how to think like a hunter and operate outside the rigid confines of the system. This is her turning point. She will not be a pawn of Sibyl, but the hand that brings Makishima to justice. Akane requests Kogami teach her his hunting methods, but his training is not physical. He straps her into a deep dive simulator, forcing her to inhabit the mind of a past serial killer and experience his crimes firsthand. The simulation is a brutal psychological assault, but Akane endures it, fighting to understand the abyss without falling in. Kogami watches her, explaining that to comprehend a monster like Makishima, one must first learn to think like one. He's not training an inspector, he's forging a hunter who can operate beyond Sibyl's cold logic, using empathy as a weapon. As Akane and Kogami form their shadow alliance, Inspector Genoza's suspicion deepens. He sees them slipping outside the bounds of the law and fears Akane is repeating Kogami's mistakes. Alone in his office, surrounded by holographic case files, he re-examines the infamous specimen case that led to Kogami's downfall. He's trying to anticipate their next move, to impose order on their rogue investigation. But his rigid adherence to protocol only isolates him further, leaving him to chase ghosts in the data, while the real hunt is happening just beyond his reach.
Meanwhile, Makishima Shogo calmly lays out his grand design to his accomplice, Cho Gu-sung. Surrounded by books in their hideout, he speaks not of random terror, but of a targeted strike. He reveals his ultimate goal, to expose the true nature of the Sibyl System by attacking its heart. He brings up a schematic of the Nona Tower, the headquarters of the Ministry of Welfare. Makishima's intent is clear. This is no longer about sowing chaos. It's a direct assault on the god of this world, aiming to topple the entire foundation of their society. Akane is suddenly summoned for a private meeting with the imposing bureau chief, Kasei. In the sterile, high-security office, Kasei reveals the Sibyl System's greatest secret. It is not a machine, but a hive mind composed of the brains of criminally asymptomatic individuals. She explains that Sibyl does not want Makishima dead. It wants him captured alive so he can be assimilated into its collective consciousness. Kasei then hands Akane a new type of Dominator, one that can stun but not kill. Akane's mission has changed. She is no longer an executioner, but a kidnapper for a machine god.
In a lavish, old-world study, Makishima Shogo meets with one of his influential allies, Toyohisa Senguji, a wealthy old man whose body is almost entirely cybernetic. Surrounded by taxidermy and classic literature, Senguji laments how the Sibyl System has stripped life of its meaning and its thrills. He yearns for the primal excitement of a real hunt. Makishima listens, a subtle smile playing on his lips. He presents Senguji with a new, worthy prey, someone who still possesses a brilliant, untamed will. Shinya Kogami. Senguji's eyes gleam with cruel excitement, readily accepting the challenge to hunt a fellow predator. Meanwhile, Kogami ignores official channels and pursues his own investigation. With Masaka's help, he digs into Makishima's potential network, focusing on powerful figures from the pre-Sibyl era who might resent the current system. Scouring old databases, he pieces together a profile of an individual with a known passion for big game hunting and a history of extreme body modification. The name Toyohisa Senguji flashes on his screen. Kogami realizes this isn't just a philosopher, this is a predator. Exactly the kind of person Makishima would find fascinating. He now has a tangible lead, a name to pursue.
Following his lead, Kogami enters a vast, abandoned underground complex, the perfect hunting ground. The silence is heavy, broken only by the drip of water. It feels like a trap. Suddenly, a voice echoes through the darkness. Senguji, welcoming him to the game. Before Kogami can react, sleek, robotic hounds with glowing red eyes emerge from the shadows, their metallic claws scraping against the concrete floor. They surround him.
cutting off any escape. The hunter has just become the hunted, and his opponent isn't even human. Kogami raises his revolver, his expression grim and resolute. The hunt begins. Kogami opens fire, but the robotic hounds are fast and armored. He's forced into a desperate, running battle through the industrial labyrinth, using the environment to his advantage, toppling barrels and ducking behind pillars. He manages to disable one of the machines, but another sinks its metal teeth into his leg, injuring him. As he struggles against the mechanical beast, Akane and the rest of the unit finally get a lock on his location. Realizing he's in mortal danger, they race towards the abandoned zone, but they are still minutes away as Kogami fights for his life. Kogami, wounded and cornered in the derelict factory, fights for his life against Senguji's robotic hounds. He's outmatched by the machines, but not outsmarted. Using his wits, he lures one of the hounds into a trap, crushing it with heavy machinery. Senguji watches from a distance, enjoying the spectacle, commenting on how a cornered animal is the most thrilling prey. Kogami catches his breath, knowing this is just the beginning. He has to survive the hounds before he can even think about facing their master. The air is thick with the smell of rust and ozone. Back at the bureau, Akane frantically tries to get inside Kogami's head. She ignores standard procedures and instead dives into his old case files, his thought processes, trying to think like the hunter she's becoming. She traces his obsession with Makishima back to the specimen case and its chief suspect, Toyohisa Senguji. Cross-referencing old records, she pinpoints an abandoned industrial complex owned by Senguji's Shell Corporation. He's there, she declares with newfound certainty. Genoza hesitates, but seeing the conviction in her eyes, he authorizes the team to move out immediately. The final confrontation begins. Kogami faces Senguji directly, a desperate human against a high-tech cyborg. Senguji mocks him, praising his survival instincts while landing brutal, metallic blows. But Kogami is relentless. He uses a hidden explosive, a relic from his past, to cripple the cyborg's body. The blast throws them both back. As the dust settles, Kogami stands over the heavily damaged Senguji. He asks him where Makishima is. Senguji just laughs, savoring his own demise as the ultimate hunt. "You were a magnificent opponent," he rasps, his cybernetic eye flickering. Just as Kogami presses the dying Senguji for information, a calm voice echoes through the factory. Shogo Makishima appears, holding a book, looking completely unfazed by the carnage. He congratulates both men on a fine performance, treating the life-or-death struggle as mere entertainment. He then raises a shotgun. Before Kogami can react, Makishima executes his own accomplice without a flicker of emotion. As the sound of the blast rings out, Akane and the team burst in, Dominators raised. But it's too late. Makishima casually slips away into the shadows, leaving Kogami standing over two bodies. Kogami finally corners Makishima in a vast golden wheat field, his revolver aimed for a kill shot. But Akane arrives, positioning herself between them, her Dominator leveled at Makishima. The standoff is electric. Kogami wants vengeance, a justice outside the system he no longer trusts. Akane is bound by her duty to capture Makishima alive, no matter what. Makishima himself simply watches with cold amusement, savoring the philosophical battle playing out before him. A conflict between raw emotion and flawed law. "Get out of my way, Tsunemori!" Kogami shouts, his focus entirely on ending Makishima. But Akane refuses to yield. She has her orders from the chief. Makishima must be taken alive. As Kogami lunges forward, intent on firing, Akane makes an agonizing decision. She pivots and fires her Dominator not at the villain, but at her own partner. The paralyzer blast slams into Kogami, dropping him instantly. Her duty is done, and the target is secured. But she has just betrayed her closest ally. Deep within the Ministry of Welfare's Nona Tower, Chief Kase faces the captured Makishima. She dismisses the guards and reveals the system's ultimate secret. A hidden wall retracts, unveiling Sibyl's true form. A grotesque yet brilliant hive mind of hundreds of living, disembodied brains from criminally asymptomatic individuals. Kase explains that this collective is the law, a god made of minds like his. They don't want to execute him. They want him to join them and become part of their perfect order. The Sibyl System, speaking through Kase's cybernetic body, formally invites Makishima to merge with them. He scoffs at the idea, disgusted by their soulless existence and the surrender of individuality. He asks a simple question about their collective will, and sensing their flaw, he acts. He shatters his restraints, grabs the chief, and brutally crushes her skull, destroying the avatar. Alarms scream through the facility, but it's too late. Shogo Makishima has escaped, now armed with a truth that could bring society down. Kogami is confined to his room, a prisoner in his own headquarters. The weight of his failure to kill Makishima presses down on him. The door slides open, and Masaoka enters, not as a warden, but as a confidant. He places a keycard on the table. "You're going, aren't you?" he asks, knowing the answer. This is his blessing. Kogami doesn't hesitate. He grabs the key and his gear, leaving behind his life as an enforcer. He's now a fugitive, a lone wolf on a singular mission. Find Makishima Shogo and end him, no matter the cost. Akane stands before Chief Kase, ready to take responsibility. But the chief offers no path to redemption. "Your team is being disbanded," Kase states coldly, her eyes devoid of emotion. "You ought to be taken off the case." She reveals that Kogami has escaped and is now a latent criminal to be hunted. Akane is stunned, but her resolve hardens. She argues back, insisting she's the only one who can truly catch Makishima. But Kase is dismissive. The Sibyl System has made its decision, and Akane is now on the outside looking in.
Now a fugitive, Kogami knows he can't track Makishima alone. He seeks out the one person who can get inside the mind of a philosopher killer, his former professor, Joji Saiga. Saiga lives in isolation, his own psychopaths clouded by his deep dives into the criminal psyche. Kogami lays out the situation, asking for help in profiling Makishima. Saiga, looking at the fire in his former student's eyes, understands the stakes. He agrees to help, knowing it will put him directly in the Sibyl System's crosshairs. It's a risk he's willing to take. Makishima's grand endgame begins not with a bomb, but with a grain of wheat. He releases a video message to the world, revealing his masterstroke. He has hijacked the nation's automated food supply, replacing the hyper oats that feed the entire population with an older, poison-resistant strain. The existing pesticides are now useless. The entire agricultural system, the foundation of their stable society, is poised for total collapse. Panic begins to spread as citizens realize their perfect world is fragile, and Makishima is gleefully ready to watch it burn. The city descends into madness. Makishima's bioterrorism has choked the nation's food supply, turning orderly citizens into desperate mobs. Shelves are bare, riots erupt in the streets, and automated delivery drones are looted and destroyed. The Sibyl System, once a symbol of perfect order, is failing. In the MWPSB headquarters, monitors flash red with skyrocketing crime coefficients. Ginoza and the remaining enforcers are overwhelmed, dispatched to quell riots that are spreading like wildfire. They're treating the symptoms, but the disease, Makishima Shogo, remains untouched, watching his vision of chaos unfold. Miles away from the chaos, Kogami meets with his old professor, Joji Saiga. He's no longer an enforcer. He's a hunter, guided by pure instinct and intellect. Sifting through Makishima's known philosophies, Saiga points him to the source, the Uka no Mitama hyperoats, the foundation of their society's food. They deduce Makishima isn't just causing a shortage, he's going to the heart of the system to destroy it completely. With a location finally in his sights, an abandoned northern facility, Kogami prepares his weapons. The hunt is nearing its end. Officially suspended, Akane refuses to be a bystander. She accesses restricted data, cross-referencing agricultural reports with Makishima's movements, and arrives at the same terrifying conclusion as Kogami. She knows exactly where he's going. Ginoza confronts her, pleading with her to stop, to follow orders, but her resolve is unbreakable. "I'm the only one who can stop them both," she declares, her eyes filled with a new, steely determination. Grabbing a Dominator and her coat, she leaves, a lone inspector on a mission to prevent a tragedy she sees coming. The stage is set. Under a heavy, gray sky, three figures converge on the desolate northern territories. Kogami, armed with a classic revolver, travels on a rugged motorcycle, his face a mask of grim purpose.
Akane pilots a high-speed vehicle, racing against time to intercept him. And waiting for them both, within the silent, colossal structure of the abandoned grain plant, is Makishima Shogo. He stands calmly, a book in hand, looking out over the decaying fields. He isn't just waiting to be found. He's waiting for the final act to begin.
Kogami arrives at the abandoned Uka Nomitama grain facility, a sprawling industrial ghost town. He's no longer an enforcer. He's a hunter, armed with a vintage revolver and explosives. He moves with cold purpose through the silent, decaying structures, his senses on high alert. Finding a strategic corridor, he carefully places a tripwire, a primitive trap for a man who has completely abandoned the Sibyl System's technology. Every step is deliberate, every glance calculated. He's not just here to arrest Makishima. He's here to erase him, meeting his target on his own lawless terms. Akane reaches the same desolate complex moments later, her car skidding to a halt. She steps out, looking small and alone against the towering silos, her Dominator held tightly in her hand. Her expression is a mixture of fear and resolve. She calls Genoza for backup, her voice strained. "The chief has blocked all support," he replies, his voice full of frustration. He's been ordered to stand down. Akane is completely on her own, a single officer of the law caught between two men operating far beyond its reach, forced to stop a murder that the system refuses to acknowledge. Deep inside, Makishima Shogo waits. He sits calmly in a vast control room, surrounded by dead monitors, casually inspecting the edge of a straight razor. He is the picture of tranquility, a predator confident in his own territory. He knows Kogami is coming. He knows Akane is following. This entire confrontation is a stage of his own design, the final act in his philosophical play. He begins to speak, his voice broadcast over the facility's PA system, taunting Kogami, questioning the very nature of the hunt and the meaning of a life lived by one's own will. Kogami finally corners Makishima in a cavernous, cathedral-like silo. The two men face each other across the dusty expanse, bathed in light from a high window. "So you came," Makishima says, his voice echoing. He smiles, treating this life-or-death moment like a game. He questions Kogami's soul, asking if this violent path is truly his choice. Kogami offers no reply. He simply raises his revolver, the loud crack of the gunshot shattering the silence. Makishima dodges, and the fight begins. A raw, brutal clash of fists, feet, and ideologies, with Akane racing through the facility to stop them. The final battle begins. Inside the decaying grain facility, Kogami and Makishima are locked in a brutal, desperate brawl. It's not a clean fight. It's a chaotic clash of fists, feet, and improvised weapons. Makishima, with a chilling smile, taunts Kogami, questioning the very nature of his revenge. "Is this what you wanted?" he asks, parrying a blow. "To become a monster, to hunt a monster?" But Kogami is beyond reason, fueled by pure, cold fury. Every punch, every slam against the cold steel is for the comrades he lost. He fights silently, his actions his only answer, pushing through the pain to finally end it all. Akane finally arrives, her Dominator held in a trembling grip. She sees them below, a whirlwind of violence, and screams Kogami's name. She pleads with him to stop, to remember the law he once swore to uphold. "If you kill him, you'll erase the line between you," she cries out. But Kogami doesn't even flinch. He is completely consumed by his hunt. Akane aims her weapon, but she's paralyzed. The Sibyl System registers Makishima's psychopath as clear, making her weapon a useless paperweight against him. Her only option is to shoot Kogami, the man she respects, to stop him from becoming a murderer. Makishima sees his chance in Akane's hesitation. With a surge of adrenaline, he violently shoves Kogami back, impaling him on a piece of jagged metal. As Kogami gasps in pain and collapses, Makishima doesn't waste a second. He sprints away, disappearing into the labyrinthine facility. Akane is torn between two duties, chasing the mastermind or saving her friend. She rushes to Kogami's side, trying to stop the bleeding, but the sudden roar of an engine echoes through the silo. Makishima has found an old transport truck and is crashing his way out. The ultimate prize is escaping right before her eyes. Kogami refuses to be broken.
Gritting his teeth against the searing pain in his side, he shoves Akane's helping hands away and staggers to his feet. "This has to end," he rasps, his eyes locked on the direction Makishima fled. Ignoring Akane's desperate pleas to wait for help, he finds another operational vehicle. With sheer force of will, he starts the engine and floors it, peeling out of the facility in hot pursuit. Akane is left alone in the echoing silence, having failed to stop either man, watching them disappear into the horizon for a final, lawless confrontation. Makishima Shogo finds his escape vehicle, a large transport truck abandoned in the chaos. He's not panicked. A calm, almost philosophical smile plays on his lips as he gets behind the wheel. As he drives away from the smoldering city, his destination is clear: the very heart of the system he seeks to destroy. He's heading for the mountains, towards the core of the Ukanomiitama network, the source of Japan's hyperoads and the foundation of Sibyl's control. This isn't an escape. It's the final move in his grand, nihilistic game, a direct assault on the fragile illusion of their perfect society. Kogami stumbles forward, clutching the bleeding wound in his side. Every step is agony, but the image of Makishima's face fuels his resolve. He's a wounded wolf, too stubborn to die before his hunt is over. He finds a forgotten relic in a dusty garage, a classic car, a ghost from another time. With a painful groan, he forces the engine to life. The car roars down the highway in a desperate, solitary pursuit. He's burning the last of his life's fuel, ignoring his own pain, all for one final shot at his nemesis, leaving civilization and the law behind. Akane stands alone, her orders clear: stand down. But she refuses to be a pawn. She won't let Kogami become a killer, and she won't let the system simply erase the problem. Taking decisive action, she commandeers a high-speed drone transport, her face set with grim determination. The bureau chief's avatar appears before her, cold and commanding. "What do you think you're doing, Inspector?" Akane doesn't flinch. "I'm going to stop him," she says, her voice unwavering. With that, she rockets into the sky, chasing the two men who are racing toward their doom. The chase ends on a desolate mountain road. Kogami rams the truck, sending it careening off the path. Makishima crawls from the wreckage, bloodied but still smiling, and makes a final run into a vast golden field. Kogami follows, his revolver steady in his hand, and corners him at the edge of a cliff. There are no more tricks, no more games. As Akane's drone descends, her voice screaming for him to stop, Kogami aims his weapon. He looks into the eyes of the only man who ever truly understood him, and prepares to pull the trigger, sealing both their fates. Akane sprints from her crash drone, aiming her Dominator at Kogami. "Stop!" she screams, but the weapon only registers his astronomical crime coefficient, remaining locked. Makishima, bleeding but amused, watches the moral drama unfold. Akane desperately pleads with Kogami not to become a murderer, insisting that the law must be the one to judge him. But Kogami's eyes are cold steel. He looks past her, his focus entirely on his prey. For him, the law failed the moment his friends died, and this is the only justice left. Seeing his chance, Makishima stumbles away, breaking the stalemate. Kogami turns to Akane, a flicker of his old self in his eyes. He tells her not to throw her life away following him down this path. With that final, somber goodbye, he turns his back on her and the system she represents, chasing after Makishima. Akane is left standing alone, tears streaming down her face, clutching a useless Dominator. She watches the two men disappear over the horizon, one hunting the other, both now beyond the reach of her world. At the edge of a cliff, the chase finally ends. Kogami corners the exhausted Makishima, who turns to face his executioner. With a strange serenity, Makishima asks his final philosophical question: "Will you be able to find a replacement for me?" Kogami offers no reply. He simply raises the heavy revolver, the weight of his entire past behind the action. There's no anger, only grim resolution. A single, deafening gunshot echoes through the hills. Shogo Makishima's reign of terror is over, ended not by a perfect system, but by one imperfect man. Months later, a changed Akane Tsunemori stands in the bureau chief's office. She has learned the Sibyl System's true nature, a collective of criminally asymptomatic brains, and has rejected its offer to join them. She chooses to fight for justice from within, knowing the system's flaws. A new, nervous inspector arrives at Division 1, reminding Akane of her former self. Akane greets her with a calm, steady gaze, no longer a rookie, but hardened leader. The system endures, the cycle repeats, but she will now face it with open eyes. Kogami's fate remains unknown. And that was the story of Psycho-Pass. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive with me. If you enjoyed this breakdown, a like or a comment with your thoughts would mean the world. Now, I want to hear from you. What film, anime, or series should we cover next?